guys, this is Stars Tyrant. It's the first time doing anything like this, so please forgive the archaic setup, the poor set behind me, although we do have Resident Evil 2 poster there. The purpose of doing this is because we've just recently put out episode 49 of the Project Umbrella podcast, and as we put in the descriptions, it was recorded unfortunately about 2 days before Capcom announced that they were doing the one-shot demo. So as a result, the recording got completed before any of us had a chance to play it, and obviously we've had a few people being in touch saying it's a shame because people really wanted to hear our thoughts, and we're not going to have enough time to get an episode out before the game. But yeah, these are my thoughts, and I'll just take, before I go into the demo, I'll just take a couple of moments to just explain my feelings on remakes. And the thing with remakes is I'm a big believer of preserving media as was originally intended. So I'm not a fan of director's cuts. I'm not a fan of special editions where a filmmaker goes back and changes the CGI or updates the visual look of the movie like the Wachowskis did with The Matrix, although I understand that's reverted with the most recent 4K release. So I don't like it when people tinker, and I don't like the idea that you can go back and take something that's perfect, which in my case I believe Resident Evil 2 is. It's a perfect video game, and capture that magic again. And the thing is that I do believe in art through adversity, and Resident Evil 2's problems are well documented. Everybody knows about Resident Evil 1.5. So the game that came out as a result of all the problems that game had is Resident Evil 2. So the idea that Capcom can go back and recapture that magic again is where I tend to draw a line. That's not to say all director's cuts, all remakes and everything like that are bad. I don't mind director's cuts or special editions where footage has been inserted that was originally intended. See, for example, like Aliens or the Lord of the Rings movies, because everybody knows the extended editions were the original intention. Remake of Resident Evil is a cracking example of a really good remake, and part of the reason why that works as well is because it's a self-contained game. You know, Mikami could bolt on the Lisa Trevor storyline, which was already in the true story of Biohazard and things like that. With Resident Evil 2, and this is where we've had some of the problems with the likes of Batman and I, who are big on the lore, is that any contradiction that's created in that game can potentially affect so much around it. And that's where I have this sense of unease, and with that we'll go into the demo. So with all that I've just said about remakes, I've explained why I really don't like them. I'm all for preserving, art as it was originally created. That said, the one-shot demo is brilliant. It's a brilliant Resident Evil experience. It's a brilliant Resident Evil game. It finally feels like this could be the over-the-shoulder experience that I think the fans have wanted since the fixed camera days. It seems to have the right balance of puzzle solving and scares and tension and pacing that the likes of the relentlessness of 4, 5 or 6 just can't hope to give you. I think the police station has been mostly lovingly recreated. I initially, in the early episodes when we discussed it, really was worried about a lot of the changes in the police station, but I think for the most part it has been lovingly recreated. I understand the logic that they've done with things like the main hall, but I do think the main hall has lost a sense of its sort of majesty that the original game had. But a lot of that could have just been down to the camera angles that they chose. I mean, that's the one thing you lose with an over-the-shoulder perspective, is you lose a director's eye, a sense of grandeur, that sense of scale that don't get me wrong, the remake has. The game, with regards to the zombies and things like that, it's just all wonderful. I think it plays fantastically. I've seen some people say they didn't get on with the controls over much. I actually think they were pretty tight, and I honestly found it a joy to play. I really did. The visuals are absolutely breathtaking. I've always said, and I put it on Twitter a couple of days ago, that Capcom really are wizards of their craft. Even going back as far as like the framework engine, which was used to power Resident Evil 5, and like look how good that still looks. And the same, we'll be saying the same about Remake 2 in 10 years' time. It'll still look like a good game in 10 years' time. The performance on consoles is pretty good. I've played the PlayStation 4 Pro version, and that seemed absolutely locked at 60. I didn't really notice any frame drops at all, although I'm sure we'll have the Digital Foundry right up soon, so we'll get a full breakdown of that. So I came away from the demo like very positive, despite all my fears. I never thought we would ever get like the same approach that Remake was to the original. We were never going to get fixed camera angles, even though I secretly hoped that they would just literally remake the camera angles, just remaster the backgrounds in some way. That was never going to happen. And in many ways, it looks like Capcom have taken the opportunity to actually change as much as they can. Which leads us on to the things about the demo I'm not too keen on, and it's mainly it is the canon stuff I was talking about in the remake section at the beginning of the video. We've already seen dates changed, events are different now in the operations report, and the problem with that is particularly with like the storyline of David Ford changing, it causes contradictions between Resident Evil 3, Outbreak, Umbrella Chronicles, because we do know certain aspects of the Chronicles games are canon, and so by changing these dates, you've essentially affected 5 or 6 games, and we've discussed this briefly on the podcast, and that's where I have the kind of issue, because I think what we're going to do, and I've tried to do it in this diagram that I'll put up on screen, is that I think we're going to have a problem with the timeline. I think it's inevitable at this point. I do not think the timeline will be the same thing we know of it once the game's out. And what's going to happen is, I think you're going to have the timeline as shown on this image up to 1998. Then you'll get to Resident Evil, and the timeline will split into 2. And on one side, you're going to have the original, the classic, with all the Umbrella Chronicles scenarios, the Outbreak scenarios, the Resident Evil 3, all the way through to Survivor, and Umbrella's End and things like that. And then you get to Resident Evil 4, when I think the timeline will rejoin and then carry on as normal as we know it. I think we're going to have a remake timeline where it's going to incorporate Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, and then go straight to Resident Evil 4. I think they will use this opportunity to streamline the games into essentially what will be numbered titles and revelations. I would not be at all surprised if you play through Resident Evil 2 and you will find out information about the Tyrant mass production facility, and the word Sheena Island are not mentioned at all. I wouldn't be surprised, because the thing is, if they do something like change the backstory of the Tyrants and keep it within a numbered title, they don't have to worry about bringing Survivor out again. If they make a reference to Sheena Island, then it creates a situation where people who are going to be playing the Remake 2, and there's going to be a lot of people playing the Remake 2, and they're going to go, where do Tyrants come from? What is this Sheena Island facility? The issue with Sheena Island is it's obviously mentioned in the Zero intro, so there's still a chance it's going to remain, and obviously the Capcom of today did put Alyssa Ashcroft mention in Resident Evil 7. So I'm possibly going to be all wrong, and there's going to be wonderful references to Sheena Island and all the Outbreak scenarios and everything like that. But we just simply don't know at this point, and it's almost a certainty. I know some places are reporting that Remake 3 is confirmed. Well, until I actually see it from a press release or anything from Capcom, and we'll just assume it's going to be on the way, and that a lot of the work's probably already been done because they're building some of it in Remake 2. So with regards to the timeline, I think this is probably going to be a situation we might have to deal with. There's going to be some interesting debates and arguments on forums Try and stay civil, everybody. We're all fans of the same thing, but there is going to be disagreements. There are going to be people who say this is the new canon, and everything to do with the original Resident Evil 2, 3, Outbreak, and everything like that is discarded now. There's going to be some people who say, similar to the sort of discipline you need with Umbrella Chronicles, they're going to say, hey, if it's not referenced or mentioned in any other game, then it's canon for this. So there's concerns, and we'll hammer it out as best we can on the podcast. And my only other really sort of issue with the demo is they've changed some of the characters, and keeping it strictly to the one-shot demo, I really have an issue with the lengths they're going to make Irons utterly reprehensible and awful. I just don't buy the fact that he would be able to overpower several police officers, take them upstairs to the attic or whatever it is, lock them all in a cell, rig it with C4, and then get them to play a game like it's something out of a Saw movie. The last thing I remember was that Brian Irons was not Jigsaw, and that's kind of what that file, that sort of ridiculous file that you find in the attic just on the other side of the cell. That's kind of where I have an issue with it. Like, why doesn't Marvin warn Leon? Because that kind of thing is incredibly public. This isn't just the original Resident Evil 2 Irons sneaking around the station and shooting people in the back when they're not looking, like he does with Ed, and he describes it in a file. This is someone actually willingly getting everybody together, marching them upstairs probably at gunpoint, putting them in a cell, and making them play this sadistic game. He just seems really overdone, and I'm not sure. I never thought we would be here, 21 years later from Resident Evil 2 and say, hey, that depiction of Irons in the original was actually subtle. And so, I do have concerns that certain characters are going to be mishandled a little bit. But then on the other hand, one of the things that Batman's always said was he appreciates the fact that they are going to such great lengths to change it, because it makes it feel truly different. So we'll see. But back to the positives. It plays fantastically. I think it's going to be the best over-the-shoulder Resident Evil experience. Not necessarily my favourite, but I think it will be the best in terms of it. It finally feels like that marriage of old and new, in a way that I don't think we've really seen before. Like I say, the destruction to the zombies is breathtakingly good. It's incredibly gory. I think it's probably going to be the most violent we've ever seen in the series, and that's saying something. And I had honestly a blast playing it, but I just kind of, part of me just wishes I wish we weren't talking about Resident Evil 2, because that game is untouchable for me, and this game could be the best Resident Evil game ever in terms of how it's designed and created, but it will never touch the original for me. The original is one of the games I hold up on a pedestal and praise it for changing what we expect from storytelling in video games. I've said this so many times, but scenes like Hunk's team being taken out was, you have to imagine what that must have been like to see in the 90s when 3D graphics were only just really becoming. Well, I mean, the PlayStation had been around for 4 years at this point, but to see the presentation, the production value that things like Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil 2 did in 1998 was very, very special. And in that respect, Resident Evil 2 will always be, a really special game for me. And the remake too, it's going to be wonderful, but it's just going to be a great Resident Evil. It's not going to change the way we perceive games, and that's fine. It doesn't have to. And what I truly love the most about the remake 2 is the fact that this is the most unified I've seen this community in what could be something like 15 years. I mean, the last time we saw something positive like this was when Remake finally got released from Nintendo's shackles and came out on all formats. And that was really good. It was really heartwarming to see everybody sort of come together and celebrate the series again, because it is worth celebrating. I just really, really hope we're not going to have some big timeline problems. That's my biggest fear for this project now, is it's going to literally rip this timeline in half. And what you have to bear in mind is this series has been through some dark times. This is where I'll leave it. The series has been through some dark times, and what we've always had in those dark times of Resident Evil 6 and most recently Vendetta is we've always had the canon. We've always had the storyline, and it's a canon you've got to put a lot into to extract the most out of. If you want to learn about certain things, you've got to buy Mahara Desire or Heavenly Island. I'm probably saying this and some people won't even know what I'm talking about. But if you put the time into the canon, it pays you back very well, and you get to see this broad canvas of great work and storytelling. Not all of it is perfect. There's been quite a few missteps along the way, but the fact that the timeline works as well as it does with the amount of contributors that this series has had and everything is a masterpiece. And my worry is this game that everybody's been demanding for so long is going to be great, but what lasting damage is it going to do to this timeline? This timeline which up until now, barring the odd little retcon here and there, has been mostly solid and watertight. This is the first time I think personally the timeline has been in real danger of collapsing under its own weight, and it's going to be really, really interesting to see what is going to happen in the wake of Resident Evil 2. But we're all going to be there on launch day, and we're all going to be playing it regardless, and we're all going to be having a great time, one would hope. So with that, Stars Tyrant signing off, and depending on how well I feel this looks when I now go back to edit it, I'll see if I'll do some more in the future. So until then, thank you very much, and see you soon.